Good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today's January the 30th day of the new year. 335 days remain to the year's over with. Holidays observances. National Draw a Dinosaur Day. National Escape Day. National Croissant Day. School Day of Nonviolence and Peace. Yodel for Your Neighbors Day. National It Ain't Answering Message Day. Family Mediation Week. National Storytelling Week. National School Choice Week. And Cordova Iceworm Festival Week. You haven't lived, you've gone to an iceworm festival, let me tell you. Famous people born in this state: Franklin D. Roosevelt, Christian Bale, Dick Cheney, Gene Hackman, and Wilmer Valderrama from NCIS. It's January. Dry January. Manuary, when you embrace your inner lumberjack. National Blood Donor Month. February, Thyroid Awareness Month. National Birth Defects Awareness Month. Cervical Cancer Awareness Month. National Slow Cooking Month. Bread Machine Baking Month. National Clean Up Your Computer Month. International Brain Teaser Month. National Soup Month. National Be on Purpose Month. National Clean Up Your IRS Act Month. National Skating Month. Fresh Florida Tomato Month. National CBD Month. Apple and Apricot Month. National Hobby Month. National Oatmeal Month. National Bass Safety Month. Clap for Health Month. National Poverty in America Awareness Month. Get a Balanced Life Month. National Black Diamond Month. Get Organized Month. International Creativity Month. Celebration of Life Month. National Be Kind to Food Servers Month. And National Hot Tea Month. Well, all that having been said, in 1018, Poland and the Holy Roman Empire conclude the Peace of Botzen. On this date in 1287, King Warayu founds the Hanthawaddy Kingdom, proclaims independence from the pagan kingdom. 1607, an estimated 200 square miles along the coast of the Bristol Channel and the Severn Estuary in England were destroyed by massive flooding, resulting in the death of over 2,000 people. On this day in 1648, during the 80 Years' War, Treaty of Munster and Osnabrück is signed, ending the conflict between the Netherlands and Spain. 1649, Charles I of England is executed in Whitehall, London. 1661, Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector of the Commonwealth of England, is ritually executed more than 2 years after his death on the 12th anniversary of the execution of the monarch he himself deposed. He's the one that started the process that led to Charles I losing his head. 1667, a truce of Andrusovo is signed, ending the Russian-Polish War of 1654. 1789, Tay-son forces emerged victorious against Qing armies and liberate the capital, Thanglang. 1806, the original Lower Trenton Bridge, also called the Trenton Makes the World Takes Bridge, which spans the Delaware River between Morrisville, Pennsylvania, and Trenton, New Jersey, is opened up. 1820, Edward Bransfield sights the Trinity Peninsula and claims the discovery of Antarctica. This day in 1826, the Menai Suspension Bridge, considered the world's first modern suspension bridge connecting the Isle of Anglesey to to the northwest coast of Wales is opened up. 1835, in the first assassination attempt against the President of the United States, Richard Lawrence tried to shoot President Andrew Jackson, but he failed and was subdued by a crowd, including several congressmen as well as Jackson himself. 1847, Yerba Buena, California is renamed San Francisco. 1858, the first Halle concert is given in Manchester, England, marking the official founding of the Halle Orchestra as a full-time professional orchestra. 1862, the first American ironclad warship, the USS Monitor, is launched. 1889, Archduke Crown Prince Rudolph of Austria, heir to the Austro-Hungarian crown, is found dead with his mistress, Baroness Mary Vetsera, in the Merling. The Merling, this is also called the Merling Incident. It's a series of events that surrounded the apparent murder-suicide pact of Rudolph, Crown Prince of Austria, and his lover, Baroness Mary Vetsera. They were found dead on January 30th, 1889, in an imperial hunting lodge in Merling. Now, Rudolph was married to Princess Stephanie of Belgium, was the only son of Emperor Franz Joseph and Empress Elizabeth, and was heir apparent to the throne of Austria-Hungary. His mistress was the daughter of Albin von Vetsera, a diplomat at the Austrian court. Albin had been created a baron in 1870. She was just 17. Rudolph was 30. It was either a well-covered-up murder or a murder-suicide. 1902, the first Anglo-Japanese alliance is signed in London. 1908, Indian pacifist and leader Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi is released from prison by Jhansi Smuts after being tried and sentenced to 2 months in jail earlier in the month. 1911, the destroyer USS Terry makes the first airplane rescue at sea, saving the life of Douglas McCurdy, 10 miles from Havana, Cuba. 1920, Japanese car maker Mazda is founded initially as a cork producing company. 1925, the government of Turkey expels the Patriarch Constantine VI from Istanbul. 1930, the Politburo of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union orders the confiscation of lands belonging to the kulaks. The campaign of dekulakization, resulting in the executions and forced deportations of millions of people. 1933, Adolf Hitler's rise to power. On this date, in 1933, he took office as the Chancellor of Germany. 1939, during a speech in the Reichstag, Hitler made a prediction about the end of the Jewish race in Europe if another world war were to occur. 1942, World War II. Japanese forces invade the island of Ambon in the Dutch East Indies. Some 300 captured Allied troops were killed after the surrender. 1/4 of the remaining POWs remained alive at the end of the war. (1944), World War II. The Battle of Cisterna, part of Operation Shingle, begins in central Italy. 1945, World War II, the Wilhelm Gustloff, overfilled with German refugees, sinks in the Baltic Sea after being torpedoed by a Soviet submarine. Approximately 9,500 people were killed. 1945, World War II, the raid at Cabanatuan. 126 American Rangers and Filipino resistance fighters liberate over 500 Allied prisoners from the Japanese-controlled Cabanatuan POW camp. 1948, British South African Airways Tudor 4 Star Tiger vanishes over the Bermuda Triangle. On the day of 1948, also following the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi in his home compound, India's Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru broadcast to the nation saying the light has gone out of our lives. The date of his assassination becomes observed as Martyrs' Day in India. 1956, in the U.S., civil rights movement leader Martin Luther King Jr.'s home is bombed in retaliation for the Montgomery bus boycott. In 1959, the forces of the Sultanate of Muscat occupied the last strongholds of the Emirate of Oman, Saik, and Suraha, marking the end of the Jebel Akhdar War in Oman. 1959, MS Hans Hedtoff, specifically designed to operate in icebound seas, strikes an iceberg on her maiden voyage and sinks. Kills all 95 people on board. 1960, the African National Party is founded in Chad through the merger of traditionalist parties. 1964, in a bloodless coup, General Nguyen Khan overthrows General Durang Van Min's military junta in South Vietnam. 1968, Vietnam War. Tet Offensive is launched by forces of the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army against South Vietnam, the U.S., and their allies. The 1969, the Beatles' last public performance on the roof of Apple Records in London. This impromptu concert is broken up by the police. 1972, the Troubles. Bloody Sunday. British paratroopers opened fire on anti-internment marchers in Derry, Northern Ireland. Killed 13 people. Another person later dies of injuries sustained during the riot. 1972, Pakistan leaves the Commonwealth of Nations in protest of its recognition of breakaway Bangladesh. 1974, Pan American Flight 806 crashes near Pago Pago International Airport in American Samoa. Killed 97 people. 1975, the Monitor National Marine Sanctuary is established as the first U.S. National Marine Sanctuary. 1975, Turkish Airlines Flight 345 crashes into the Sea of Marmara near Istanbul. Yassil Koya Airport, killed 42 people. 1979, a very Boeing 707 freighter, flown by the same commander as Flight 820, disappears over the Pacific Ocean 30 minutes after it took off from Tokyo. Now, interestingly enough, Flight 820 was the flight of Brazilian airline Varig that departed from the Galeão International Airport in Rio de Janeiro, July 11, 1973, for Orly Airport in Paris, France. The plane, a Boeing 707, made an emergency landing in onion fields about 3.1 miles from Orly Airport due to smoke in the cabin from a fire in the lavatory. That fire caused 123 deaths. Only 11 survivors, 10 crew members, and 1 passenger. Relief Captain Antonio Fuzimoto was the pilot that handled the controls and landed the plane in the onion field. And then he was the commander of another plane, a freighter, that vanished over the Pacific Ocean. That's known as a string of bad luck, don't you know? 1982, Richard Squirrenta writes the first PC virus code, which is 400 lines long and disguised as an Apple boot program called Elk Cloner. 1989, the American Embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan is closed. 1995, hydroxycarbamide becomes the first approved preventative treatment for sickle cell disease. In 2000, Kenya Airlines Flight 431 crashes into the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of the Ivory Coast, killed 169 people. In 2006, the Goleta Postal Facility shootings occurred, killed 7 people before the perpetrator took her own life. 2007, Microsoft Corporation releases Windows Vista. A major release for the operating system, Microsoft Windows, and the NT-based kernel. 2013, Nero 1 becomes the first carrier rocket launched by South Korea. In 2020, the World Health Organization declares the COVID-19 pandemic to be a public health emergency of international concern. And it literally shut down the world. Now, it appears today that it was, in fact, a launch by the Chinese. RFK Jr. is in front of Congress for his confirmation hearings, but there's been multiple clashes with Democratic senators. They are not happy that a Kennedy, of all people, have joined the Republicans. Well, yesterday, Trump signed the Laken Riley Act into law. Her name was Laken Hope Riley. And he has directed ICE to retain illegal immigrants accused of theft-related crimes. Now, states can sue the Department of Homeland Security for harm caused by illegal immigration. And it permits deportation of illegal immigrants who harm others or assault police. The name honors a nursing student who was killed while jogging on the University of Georgia campus by an illegal immigrant, Jose Ibarra. Previously been arrested but never detained by ICE. Got a prison sentence for killing 22-year-old Laken Riley. Her father and sister were present at the signing of the measure. All House Republicans supported it, as did 48 of the Democrats. Apparently, in the Democratic mind, if you're undocumented or here illegally, you can do no wrong. Mayor of Minneapolis has announced the city will not cooperate with President Trump's deportation policy. There is a lawsuit alleging what started the Eaton fire. Shows arcing on a Southern California Edison electrical tower, and that appears to have started the fire. The Chinese migrants are flooding South Florida by boat. Cuban smugglers are bringing them in by the boatload. Smugglers from Cuba and Haiti, specifically. RFK Jr.'s former running mate has threatened political war against those that oppose his confirmation. And she called out, her name is Nicole Shanahan, called out various senators by name. Says she'll fund primary challenges against them if they oppose confirming Kennedy as Secretary of Health and Human Services. On X, she posted a message, "Dear U.S. Senators, Bobby may play nice, but I don't." She said in 2020 she cut large checks to Chuck Schumer to help Democrats flip 2 Senate seats in Georgia from red to blue. She's threatened to do the same thing to those that oppose Kennedy. Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, says it's nonsense to think that tariffs cause inflation. He said India and China have the most tariffs and no inflation. Had our previous administration not spent like drunken sailors, we might not have inflation here. White House has rescinded the OMB memo about freezing woke funds, but so the press secretary said the White House is still committed to freezing those funds. India's President Modi talks about his dear friend, President Trump. A lot of countries are nervous with Trump back in the White House, but India's not. Trump is going to send 30,000 criminal illegal aliens to Guantanamo Bay detention camp. That's in Cuba. Protesters are comparing the immigration raids to the Gestapo, going after the Jews during World War II. Of course, there is a major difference. The Jews haven't committed any crimes. The undocumented immigrants committed a crime when they came here. A Democratic politician was pulled over by a police officer in Paulsboro, New Jersey. Councilman Theodore Holloway was stopped. It's caught on police video cam. And he berated the officer for pulling over his boss. Amber Rose is standing by President Trump after being canceled for supporting him. She supported President Trump at the Republican National Convention this past summer. She's an actress and a model. Received a great deal of backlash for openly supporting Trump ahead of the election. She said things have pretty much quieted down now. An Illinois City Police Department has vowed to block local law enforcement from coordinating with the ICE. The department said in accordance with the Illinois Trust Act, it won't give ICE information on individuals suspected to be illegal immigrants. We shall see what comes of that. Tim Walz has come clean about the Harris campaign lost Trump. Said it's been pure hell. New York City residents praise ICE raids after violent criminals and gang members are captured. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said ICE agents got thank you messages from the residents. New York City is America's largest sanctuary city, though many say they have regretted that. CDC has been ordered to immediately stop collaborating with the World Health Organization. During his first confirmation hearing on Capitol Hill, RFK Jr. Was taken to task by Senator Sheldon in the White House, Democrat of Rhode Island, and conservatives blasted White House for being, how did they put it, a jackass. His droning monologue during Kennedy's hearing left everyone in total puzzlement as to what point he was trying to make. Well, a high school basketball coach suspended after hanging up a Palestinian flag and refusing to shake hands with the Jewish coaches. It happened during a game between Lotus School of Excellence in Aurora, Colorado, and the Denver Torah Academy. Trump has fired two Democratic commissioners on the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency as the White House targets DEI programs. They were fired late Monday night, according to press releases both of them made. Yeah, let's see, is there anything else of any interest? Well, there have been a number of program cancellations, and some of them leave me totally baffled in regard to why they were there in the first place. We'll cover a few of them. Well, what happened to them? I had an entire list. It went bye-bye. Looking at what's planned by President Trump, he did the Department of Governmental Efficiency. That's the one that's being headed by Elon Musk. A list of some of the programs they're eliminating. And the first one, I gotta admit to being baffled. It's the National Squirrel Census Program, $2.3 million per year to determine how many squirrels there are. I don't know who came up with this, but it's silly. Count squirrels. I mean, give me a break. Program number 2 is the Federal Committee on Sandwich Standards. We spend $5 million per year to have someone to determine what constitutes a sandwich. The number 3 is the Bureau of Uneven Sidewalk Awareness. Please. $1.8 million per year to make sure sidewalks are even. Program number 4 is the National Soap Carving Championship. $700,000 per year in order to teach people how to carve soap. You have to wonder exactly what's going on here. Program number 5 is the Bureau of Left-Handed Scissors. All you got to do is turn if you're left-handed, turn the scissors around. I mean, please. We've got the National Moth Appreciation Day. That's going to $250,000 a year. And these are annual programs. Program number 8 is the Office of Inflatable Pool Regulations. We spend $1 million a year to determine if those little multicolored things that float in your pool are sufficient. Pool noodles, I think they're called, if they have the right buoyancy. The program number 9 is the Duck Quack Research Fund. $4 million to determine if duck quacks echo. If you've ever been duck hunting, you know whether or not their quacks echo. Nobody paid me to go. Program number 10, the National Database of Presidential Hairstyles. $800,000 per year to catalog the different presidential hairstyles. $800,000 per year. I mean, the first 10 programs alone remove over $20 million from the budget. You have to wonder, does anybody look at some of the silliness that our harebrained representatives spend money on? Quite frankly, the squirrel census left me fascinated. It number one, who cares how many squirrels there are? But apparently there's a federal agency that cares. Well, we've been talking about some of the strange things about World War II. There was a man named Charles Fort. He died in 1932. He spent a lifetime studying phenomena that hovered on the edges of reality, so to speak. Everything from storms of frogs dropping from the sky to weird airships floating around prior to the start of the aircraft era. Wrote a couple of excellent books. One was called Low, and the other is The Book of the Damned. His legacy is that he dared to study strange phenomena and explore the meaning behind it. Rather than just write about it, he dove into it. Now, had he lived to see World War II, there's no doubt his list of anomalous phenomena would have grown exponentially. You know, one topic that never fails to raise people's attention, and I've written a number of books on it, are UFOs. Now, very few people seem to realize during World War II, there were quite a number of UFO events. And World War II added another dimension to warfare. I guess you could call it a third dimension. Although the balloons and planes have been used in various other conflicts, air power really came of age, I guess you could say, during World War II. And paranormally speaking, the action went all on the ground. And witnesses, who include a number of well-trained pilots, suggest the phenomena they experienced during the war didn't come just from the third dimension, but from dimensions beyond time and space. Fighter and bomber pilots who flew missions over Europe claimed that strange glowing objects with unmatched speed and agility followed them and even harassed them, and sometimes even mounted attacks on their formations. The pilots referred to them as Foo Fighters. We'd call them UFOs. Now, not all the Foo Fighters were in Europe, in what's referred to as the Battle of Los Angeles. West coast of the U.S. witnessed the only battle between the forces of humanity and a craft or crafts piloted by apparently extraterrestrial intelligence. If ETs did come in peace during World War II, the Anti-Aircraft Gun-Wielding Welcome Committee may have made them leave in a hurry. In the late autumn of 1944, American pilots knitted into formations of bombers and fighters swarmed the skies over Germany. And of course, as behooved them to be, they were always on high alert. Rogue German fighters could pounce on their planes the second they let their guard down. Flak guns could blast metal shells their way at any moment. So they were prepared for that. But the pilots are caught completely off guard by a new mysterious presence that made itself known in the skies above Europe at the end of 44. The pilots and crews of these planes watched as mystery globs of light, often yellow or orange, shot into the air and darted through the sky. And these objects often moved toward the formation. Thinking that enemy planes had them in their sights, the pilots began evasive maneuvers, and the gunners stood by ready to press the triggers. But when the lights closed in, they were stunned to see that these craft didn't look or move like any aircraft known to be in the enemy arsenal. They climbed at speeds beyond the acceleration of any aircraft at that time and darted through the formations in ways that would create G-forces strong enough to tear a human body apart. Well, the air crews that witnessed them dubbed these flying lights Foo Fighters, said to be after a comic strip catchphrase. They were also called Kraut Fireballs. And while current UFO theorists jump to extraterrestrial explanation, it's important to note that Allied air crews didn't immediately entertain the idea these objects were pilots of extraterrestrial crews. They firmly believed they were a new German secret weapon. And throughout the war, in veiled messages and threats, Hitler insinuated that German scientists were about to unleash scores of secret weapons on the Allies. With V-2 rockets and jet planes tearing through the skies, the pilots are ready to believe that the fighters were a new phase in Germany's plan to win the war using secret weapons. And if they were secret weapons, they didn't seem to go on the attack. They seemed interested in observing and toying with the American bombers and fighters. They didn't appear to be trying to destroy them. U.S. Army Air Major William Leet reported on one Foo Fighter encounter, according to Mac Maloney, a historian of wartime UFO sightings. He wrote a book called UFOs in Wartime, What They Didn't Want You to Know. And he said Lee was piloting his B-17 called the Old Crow over Austria in December of 1944. And he was flying his plane alone, taking part in a lone wolf mission. Lone wolf missions were meant to surprise and frustrate the German air defense and Air Force crews who were used to massive Allied bombing raids with dozens of bombers. Now, Leet made visual contact with a strange object as he and his crew began to leave the airspace over Austria. He said the craft was perfectly circular, glowing amber light, and estimated its size to be about 10 feet in diameter. Oddly, he said he just looked at that piece of airspace seconds before and it was empty, and then when he glanced back, this light popped into view. Well, the pilot, with numerous missions and hundreds of hours of flying under his belt, never saw the Germans fly anything like this, and he definitely knew the Allied forces didn't have access to such a craft. His crew was convinced it was an attacking German aircraft and wanted to shoot it down, but Leet was convinced that, number one, it wasn't a Nazi fighter, and number two, it wasn't demonstrating any form of hostile intentions. So he didn't believe it was a threat at all. So he told his crew to desist any hostile activity toward the craft. And he said the craft remained peacefully content to just fly with his B-17 for a long portion of the flight back to base. And that gave him a long time to observe and study his escort. One thing he noticed was the object didn't change. Its speed, course, and luminosity were steady. Seemed to reinforce his initial observation this was an intelligence-controlled craft. Meteor would have changed size and shape, as well as quickly lose some of its shine going through the Earth's atmosphere. And a planet would have seemed to change course as the plane changed course, but this object followed the bomber as it zeroed in on its home base. Whatever this intelligence, whether it was human or inhuman, copied his every move during the mission. He also noticed a lack of exhaust, and no man-made craft could have kept up that speed without producing some kind of exhaust. And over time, he became convinced this wasn't a German wonder weapon, but he was also convinced it was something not of this world. Well, the idea was reinforced when the crew lost contact with their impromptu escort. He said it didn't bank or turn away, it didn't increase speed, didn't change altitude, didn't slow down. It just literally vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Well, when Leet and his crew landed, they reported the incident to the intelligence officer assigned to the squadron. And the officer had a few suggestions for what the crew had witnessed. But although the crew of the Old Crow never fired a shot at the object, they quickly and efficiently shot down all of the theories the intelligence officer put out on the table. When the intelligence officer assured Leet it was a German fighter, he responded that whatever this was never took hostile action against his crew. It'd be kind of an odd strategy for a super secret fighter plane not to take a completely vulnerable bomber and shoot it down. When the officer guessed it was a spotter for German anti-aircraft gunners, Leet said that during most of the mission, they were far from any anti-aircraft batteries. That put an end to that particular theory. But no other squadron tangled with Foo Fighters quite like the pilots of the 415th Night Fighter Squadron, according to Maloney. Some experts suggest that those pilots were actually the ones that dubbed the strange craft they witnessed Foo Fighters, although there's really no way to know for sure at this late date. But what makes their reports even more credible is that only special pilots can make it into that unit. Clean eyesight and outstanding skills of observation were definitely needed. In other words, these are not the type of people who mistake the planet Venus for a hovering extraterrestrial mothership. They're also among the bravest pilots, and a force composed of brave pilots. They flew off into the night, completely vulnerable to German pilots and aircraft gunners. Well, on the night of November 26, 1944, those skills were put to the test in ways one veteran night fighter crew member of the 415th could never have imagined. Well, one crew jumped into their British-built Bristol Beaufighter, a multi-seat fighter, and cruised out of the 415th's base in France, searching for German trains that might be delivering ammunition and supplies to the troops. After destroying a few of those trains, the pilot noticed a red light appear and fly alongside his aircraft. This light came as close as a half-mile away from his plane before it vanished. Didn't seem to be a big deal, and the pilot mentioned the sighting in his debriefing mission, and it ended there. But, unfortunately, the Foo Fighters weren't done with the 415th. One veteran of the squadron, Lieutenant Donald Myers, later reported pilots encountered more than one group of the Foo Fighters. He said there were red fireballs that would fly at the tips of the plane's wings. 3 balls of Foo Fighters appeared in a vertical row and flew in front of the planes. Another group of Foo Fighters, about 15, hovered in the distance. And some of the lights actually flickered on and off. With Christmas holidays approaching, the pilot couldn't help but remark the whole scene looked like a Christmas tree, all decorated up for the season. Well, Myers also said at least one Foo Fighter was not in the Christmas spirit and actually chased his plane. Told the reporter he was cruising over the Rhine Valley at about 700 feet when he noticed 2 strange fireballs, as he described them, coming directly at him. Not sure what they were, and presuming a defensive posture, he tried to outmaneuver the Foo Fighters, but he couldn't do it. He banked to the left, they turned with him. Banked to the right, and they stayed right there with him. We were going 260 miles an hour, and the balls were keeping right up with us, he said. Well, some UFO historians say that radar operators, not pilots, may be the ones who initially called these unusual aerial phenomena Foo Fighters. But the debate on who gets credit for the nickname continues. Radar operators at the time did receive odd returns on their scopes and certainly saw strange activity on their screens. In some cases, this phenomena coordinated with what the pilots for the 415th were witnessing. During the December incident, for example, radar operators saw blips on the screen that corresponded to the pilot's eyewitness accounts of the Foo Fighters. The radar operator in an anti-aircraft battalion, Andrew Armrose, reported the Foo Fighters were a somewhat common occurrence. Radar operators called these incidents ghost. According to Armrose, he'd frequently picked up a target on the radar screen that appeared to be a conventional aircraft, but upon being tracked, it would accelerate to a fantastic speed that made it impossible to set a rate and even more difficulty to identify. So we just referred to him as Ghost. Well, it wasn't just pilots and crews about that aircraft that saw Foo Fighters. American journalist who was reporting on the Normandy landing said he saw a strange craft in the sky above the invasion site. Craft he struggled to identify, let alone explain. According to George Tott, reporter for the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, who was on Omaha Beach one evening. The troops he was covering for the paper were about to break out of the beach and take on German forces in the interior of France. While walking on the beach, he looked up and saw a pulsating red fireball in the sky cruising overhead. He estimated the altitude of this thing to be about a half-mile up. The light, several times larger than any star in the sky that night, glided effortlessly overhead. He began to speculate as what it might be. His first guess was a new German weapon that the Allied forces called a buzz bomb. The rocket-powered V-1s had started to fly to German bases and into England just a few weeks before this sighting. But there was a problem with that speculation, and he knew it. This object was flying into the German lines, not away from it. In England, the V-1 flew in the exact opposite direction that this strange aircraft was flying. And just the way this object maneuvered made the group of soldiers, including some high-ranking officers, arrive at the conclusion it was definitely not a buzz bomb. It moved over the beach and halted directly above the German-American lines and just hovered there. He timed it, Talt said, and it remained there for about 17 minutes before flying away. Maybe most of the witnesses to this Normandy incident never heard the expression Foo Fighters. I mean, it was actually it was a relatively new phenomena. But they did realize they had witnessed something strange and unexplainable that night. Something most Fortean experts now place in the category of a World War II Foo Fighter. And it wasn't just Europe that had Foo Fighters. There were Foo Fighters over the Pacific as well. Now, while most of the documented Foo Fighter engagements were in fact reported by Allied crews over the battlefields of Europe, a lot of pilots saw similar things in the Pacific theater. According to the December 1945 issue of VFW magazine, B-29 crews had several run-ins with craft that closely matched what their colleagues were seeing in Europe. These fireballs followed the bombers so closely that some witnesses said the objects almost sat on the plane's tails. They changed colors rapidly, flashing from orange to red to white and repeating that cycle. With tales of devastating kamikaze attacks not far in the back of their minds, pilots initially thought these strange craft were Japanese suicide pilots. But just as the sightings in Europe prompted no attacks, the Foo Fighters in the Pacific were strangely passive with the massive bombers who were doing attack runs to Japan. And one disturbing account of the Foo Fighters chased American B-29, one of the super fortresses that was delivering punishing bomb loads to Japan into a cloud bank. Visibility was near zero in the cloud, and the pilot believed there'd be no way the strange craft could predict his evasive maneuvers. He said at that point in time, his plane was nearly invisible. But when he pulled his bomber out of the clouds, the Foo Fighter was right there. It had matched its turns and twists with impeccable precision. And it was so close, he could better describe the Foo Fighter. It was only about 500 yards away. He said it was about 3 feet in diameter, wrapped in a phosphorescent red and orange glow. He didn't see any wings or tail or rudder that would suggest a conventional aircraft. He said it was neither a plane nor a missile, something totally unknown. And just like the encounters of other crews who claimed to have seen Foo Fighters, these objects mysteriously disappeared as well. Crew of the B-29 said as they approached the target and as the sunlight began to appear, the Foo Fighters just literally vanished. Magazine reports on one more Foo Fighter sighting in the Pacific. I'm talking about VFW magazine. B-24 Liberator crew saw one as it cruised high above Truk Lagoon, a once formidable Japanese naval base in the Carolina Islands. According to this crew's report, they were flying about 11,000 feet over Truk Lagoon when they noticed two red glowing balls of light rising into the air and heading toward them. During the flight, the orbs kept in close contact with the Liberator. One twisted around and returned to base, or wherever it came from, and according to the crew. The other light stayed close to the base, close to the plane, rather. Sometimes it was right beside the plane, sometimes slightly behind it. Other times, the light swung in front of the bomber, obviously not afraid it'd lose contact with the plane. Eventually, shortly after daybreak, the light soared up a few thousand feet and vanished. Bomber crew radioed a nearby radio installation to get an assessment of the enemy aircraft in the area. According to the radar installation, there were no enemy aircraft in the area. Well, so the question becomes, what were the Foo Fighters, and why did they seem so keen to keep a close eye on the air-led aircraft? Well, in 1944, everybody was sure they knew the answer. German secret weapons. Some thought they might have been remote-controlled machines. German scientists and engineers made great progress in building remotely controlled airplanes. Lack of offensive capability seemed to cause doubt to a lot of folks, though. Why build a remote-controlled airplane that just safely tags along with an Allied formation? And then there was the matter of the performance of these crafts. Nearly all the reports about Foo Fighters include details that are hard to explain. through the performance of known aircraft at the time. Crafts are said to make instant stops and hover, reach great speeds, disappear instantly, and master quick turns and dives of top-of-the-line fighter planes with ease. Another theory is that the Nazis created Foo Fighters as a secret weapon and that the aim of the weapon was psychological. According to this theory, they were just remote-controlled planes designed to scare pilots. But if this is true, why have no documents of such a project turned up during the exhaustive searching and cataloging of Nazi military weapons? Nor did any Nazi officers reveal the existence of such a plan during equally exhausting interrogations. You'd think that after decades of searching the same files and hearing the same testimonies that revealed the most closely held secrets of the German war machine, would find something about the Foo Fighters. Military decided the Foo Fighters are natural phenomena, now the ball lightning or maybe St. Elmo's fire. Problem with both of these theories is that the phenomena in questions are both rare and short-lived. It's doubtful that ball lightning is going to tag along with the B-17 for over 40 minutes. And they aren't known to create radar signatures either. And although the military wanted to pass the buck and suggest more natural explanation for the Foo Fighters, one inconvenient fact confronted them. The quality of the observers who witnessed Foo Fighters and the exacting details to their observations pointed toward controlled flight, not natural phenomena. After all, there are no better observers of aerial phenomena than pilots. No better time for trained observers than during World War II. These are the pilots who see a dot on the horizon and tell you the aircraft's make and model, and whether it was hostile or not. Their lives and the lives of their crew depended on such keen powers of observation. No time in history more pilots, trained observers in the sky. Pilots during World War II also spent an unusual amount of time in the sky and witnessed a range of aerial phenomena from meteorites to strange electromagnetic and weather-related phenomena. They knew the difference between a bolt of lightning or a streaking meteorite and an intelligently piloted craft. In fact, in some cases, the sighting lasted for a relatively long period of time. It defies the imagination that a pilot who could spot an enemy fighter and prepare a countermaneuver in a few seconds couldn't spot signs of a conventional aircraft or natural aerial phenomena when they had observed that object for nearly an hour. Although the debate still rages, Foo Fighters are maybe one of World War II's most enduring aerial mysteries. And in the few minutes I've got left, I'm going to talk about something that I've talked about before. The Battle of Los Angeles. From late February 24th to the early morning hours of February 25th, 1942, the city of Los Angeles was startled awake by explosive flashes and the sweeping beams of spotlights frantically scanning the skies. These weren't popping flash bulbs and swinging spotlights at the latest movie premieres. Oh, no. This was war, and the city apparently was under attack. Now, historians mostly blame the bizarre event now known as the Battle of Los Angeles, or the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, simply on a lethal combination of war jitters. I mean, let's face it, Pearl Harbor had happened just a few months before, mixed with mistaken identity. The event's been satirized and ridiculed, and in fact, Steven Spielberg made a very funny movie called 1941, starring John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. That movie was inspired by that night's events. The movie suggested the people of L.A. may have let Hollywood's zeal for war movies cloud their judgment about the actual war. Well, after the war, the Japanese revealed there were no aircraft, at least ones they dispatched over L.A. that night. And the war records seem to corroborate that Spielberg's version of the air raid is much closer to reality than you might think. And there's another side to this. Many witnesses, while discounting a Japanese attack or any kind of conventional enemy aircraft in the sky, still believe there actually was something in the sky that night. And these are credible, sober witnesses as well. You don't seem the type of people to be swept up in war jitters, as the War Department called it. And they say the objects they saw was far more disconcerting than even a fleet of marauding enemy aircraft. The late C. Scott Littleton, professor of anthropology at Occidental College in L.A., was one of those witnesses, and Although not what you'd call a ufologist, he believed he saw that night was something more than a stray blimp or misidentified warplane. According to his account, he was just a child living with his parents and extended family in a house near Hermosa Beach in California when the blast of anti-aircraft fire woke him up. He looked out the window and could see the flashes of anti-aircraft gunfire and the frantic scanning of searchlights. Now, initially, he said what was going on didn't scare him. Gunners routinely practiced on targets towed behind aircraft, but something about the ferocity of this barrage and the confusion of searchlights, as well as the timing over most of the night exercises, were earlier in the evening than so that residents could sleep undisturbed. So what was going on caused little concern, and soon enough the rest of his family began to feel the same way. His father was neighborhood airway warden. He had received no alerts about a drill and frantically tried to contact the authorities while huddling his family together and ordering them into the makeshift bomb shelter in the basement. Littleton remembered listening to the report of the guns raking the skies while he and his mother, along with his grandparents, talked nervously among themselves. It was his mother who took the first brave steps to investigate. She walked out of their makeshift bunker and headed toward the beach, and Littleton followed, half afraid his mother had told him to go back to the basement. Shrapnel was falling on the beach. There was a roar of planes overhead, which Littleton thought might be enemy aircraft. He discovered they were pursuit planes, but he only knew that later on. And that was before he saw what the planes were actually pursuing. Lurking out over the Pacific Ocean, Littleton and his mother saw an object floating above the sea. Spotlights zeroed in on a silvery lozenge-shaped bug hanging in the night sky. No moon that night, but there was no mistaking the object for a celestial body. One thing the witnesses immediately noticed was the object stood nearly motionless. It hovered completely still. Estimated it hung between 4,000 and 8,000 feet above the ocean. And that ability to hover without making a sound was unlike anything Littleton had ever seen among the numerous military aircraft that normally practiced in the area. The gunners are obviously looking at that same object. The explosions from the anti-aircraft shells concentrated on the silver object floating above the sea. And streams of spotlights had the object in their sight as well. In fact, one famous photo shows the craft poised in the crosshairs of several spotlight beams. Well, there was a rumor that the Navy actually salvaged something that had been shot down, but I've never found a confirmation one way or the other. On that note, we've come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow. And once again, we'll be talking about stories that are strange and unusual. This is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show, saying have a truly great evening.